Okay, here we go. We're back. I had a good break. Kind of rejuvenated and ready to roll. What do you guys got?
Doug, is a week like this not only physically an opportunity to kind of reset, but also mentally?
Yeah, it's an opportunity to reset for sure. And like you just kind of, you take this week that we just had off, and it's an opportunity to reflect back on what's occurred and re-energize and remember what's important. What's important is these kids right now. We're adults. We're fine. We're going to be fine. Although there's good coaches in there, that'll be fine. And you just got to reflect and think back about what's the most important thing is those kids. And sometimes those kids don't necessarily do exactly what you want them to do, and they're youngsters, and your job's to kind of guide them and show them the way. So that's what we're trying to do.
What was your schedule this past week? Did you give them the weekend off, go through Thursday?
We went Tuesday, Wednesday, and kind of gave them about a 4-day break right there. And actually told some of the coaches to maybe they should take a break, maybe a staycation would probably be good, if anything. But that was kind of the schedule. We went a couple of practices. They're very similar, probably about an hour and 15, an hour and a half. And kind of started, game planning for K-State and moved on.
Having an open week this deep into the season, I'm guessing an extra day off here and there is probably pretty valuable for these players.
Very valuable. And again, you can look back on all the games you played and reflect back as a player and a coach and find out what do you really need to work on and how can you improve to be able to get a win. You can look at self-scout a little bit more in detail and on both sides of the ball and figure out, okay, we're giving these things away on these formations or these looks defensively, and how can we not do that?
And for Clint in particular, he hasn't had a break since he moved into his role running this defense. I'm guessing that had to be pretty helpful for him.
Yeah, it's hats off to that youngster there because he stepped in the room as he's an offensive analyst. He was drawing football plays the other way. Like offensively, and he stepped in a room full of a bunch of guys that were, put here by some other people, and took command of the room and simplified, and hadn't won much, and numbers don't show it as much, but they've played pretty well considering what's going on with us in general. So the Tech was a kind of a moral victory for them. Statistically, they held Kansas to 340 and some change. Statistically, they had to earn those drives. There's a lot of long drives. They didn't just hit them on 2 or 3 and made them earn it. And offensively, heck, it's a lot of times it's hard to score on air on a 15-play drive because you'll screw it up somewhere. So that's kind of the goal. But yeah, pleased with him and what they've done over there.
What are some things offensively you wanted to hone in on for this bye week?
Say what?
What are some things offensively you wanted to hone in on for this bye week?
Well, I think for those guys, they've got some nicks and bruises and stuff to heal up. We got a couple guys in key positions that are 100%, and I think those 4 or 5 days off are going to do wonders for those guys. And I think, again, just like defense and or offense, just how can we self-scout and look inward instead of outward, and how can we improve and find out what defenses are actually seeing in us and maybe break some tendencies and do some things. So.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Eric.
Couple weeks ago, what?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
I can barely remember yesterday, but go ahead.
We talked about Hauss, and you said you were going to have a conversation with him, his family. Has he made a decision on potentially pursuing a medical redshirt?
I'm going to talk to him. I'm not sure. So anything I tell you at this point, it won't be accurate because I don't know for sure. But we're going to sit down and have a conversation, see where he is. And I know last week, the Tuesday, Wednesday practices, he was jogging and throwing some balls and moving around a little bit. So we'll see.
What's it say about him that he made the trip to Lawrence? He made the trip to Lawrence. He's still.
It says a lot because in the days and age of maybe some of the youngsters these days, they'd prefer to just stay down here and go to the Strip and hang out, whereas he wanted to be with the team. And it says a lot about him as a person, how much it means to him, and that he's not going to waste any opportunity he can get to try to help us. He was on the sidelines rooting guys on, and I mean, it's the way it used to be, you know. So it kind of makes you feel good to know there's still guys out there like that care about the school and care about, you know, they feel there's gratitude for where they are.
How much football do you watch over like when you have a weekend like this? Because, I mean, there was one play I saw, I think Nebraska.
USC?
Yeah, Nebraska ran against UCLA. That was a screen pass. It's like, wow, that was a pretty cool play. But do you watch for stuff like that?
Yeah, I watch. There's a handful of teams I watch that are kind of air raid type teams that match some of my thought. And then I cut up 2 NFL teams and 2 college teams every week. I cut up everything out of their tapes that may give you a screen idea or a run idea or an RPO or a trick play or something. You know, the Chiefs in Washington because Cliff's at Washington. And then, you know, I watch North Texas. I cut them up a good bit because it's air raid friendly and the things they do. And then USC. But, yeah, I watch a good bit of football on the side and then try to watch any Big 12 game. You know, usually is what you gravitate to, just like you guys probably do too.
We're going to talk to Nuku Mafi here in a little bit. For a guy that is a redshirt freshman to have the experience that he's getting this season, just what have you sort of seen from him? And I guess how did he earn a start on the offensive line?
Well, he had an injury. He was starting on the right side, and it's just his movements and his punch. I mean, he's very athletic. He's got enough length to satisfy the edge, and you know, there's just not a lot of guys out there. There's a lot of guys with length, but can't move. You know, I think it's a trick. You know, he's 6'6", but his feet are bad. It's a fugazi almost. You know what I'm saying? So he's got movement skills and twitch and punch, and you think playing those guys, maybe if they're not even totally ready, it's gonna expedite the curve and make them better as they go. Him being a backup, he's not going to get good quick enough. Him playing, he's going to learn from mistakes and get good because he's got great movement skills. So he's a good football player. It means a lot to him. And I know he was on the right side and flipped to the left, and that's kind of hard to do sometimes. You know, you got to flip your feet and flip your brain. You know, essentially. I remember once, you know, I played right guard and they moved me to left guard one time and I about blew a gasket. You know, you pass it a certain way 100 million times in a row, and then you flip it all of a sudden. It's hard. So he's done a good job.
How much has the game changed from when you played on the line?
Oh
to
God,
now?
it's not even the same sport. It was like rugby compared to basketball or something. You know, I mean, it's like my son and I watched one of my games. He'd never seen me play a game just a couple years ago, and I pulled up some old Nebraska OSU game from mid '80s or whatever, and he sat there and didn't say a word for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden he goes, "Dad," I go, "Yeah." He goes, "All you guys do is just let them just run into each other the whole game." I was like, that was what football was, you know. The pass was like a trick play. So totally different. And all the disguising and all the gimmicks and the movements and the personnel swaps and all the stuff, you know, it's just it's at another level, you know, and it would be interesting to see how a defense would react to an offense of today from back then and vice versa, you know. But, yeah, it's way different to me.
Would your skill set fit better or worse in today's game than
I'd
it
be
did?
better, yeah. Way better. You don't actually have to block anybody. You just kind of get in the way a little bit, you know. We ran the ball primarily, and you actually had to kind of move people out of the way sometimes. Well, with our running backs, you just didn't have to move them too much. But I would have been more of a suited for today's game for sure. And it's crazy because back then there weren't any 300-pounders. Now, if you're not, you're just like a tight end or something. So on that note, I don't know if I could have ever gotten that big, but yeah.
How big were the relationships that you had with your coaches when you were a player? And is that something you crave years down the line to have those?
Yeah, I catch myself saying stuff my coach said to me. You know, I think all players do that. Like I'll hear Grant Gardner say some things that Joe Wickline said at practice all the time, and he's saying them. You know, I think that it's instilled in you. There's a lot of schemes that we ran when I played here 450 years ago that I can still remember the play call, the calls, how we called it, everything. You know, I'll go to my grave knowing all it's just ingrained in you. But, like, yeah, a lot of the guys that coaches, you know, Houston Nutt, Pat Jones, Brad Seeley, Tony Wise, all those guys. I mean, there's a lot of things that you reflect back on and you catch yourself saying some of the same things they said. No, it's crazy.
Is that the kind of impact you're hoping your staff can relate to the current
Yeah,
players?
yeah, surely. Imitation's the highest form of flattery, right? So, like, you coach a kid and you coach him well, and he has a good career and he's moved on with his life, and you talk to him on down the road, and there's things that you thought and said that he kind of agrees with and feels the same way. It makes you feel good, that you had an impact on him. Yep.
You mentioned a couple weeks ago about how, as a coaching staff, you guys aren't really all that heavily involved in the recruiting, but Kenyatta and Todd have
Yeah, they
really
still have to
stepped
deal with things, and they have to deal with things that are current. So there's still that part of it, and our job right now, we're going to try to keep it together and hold it together best we can for the school and the team and through whomever comes in here next. And it's they're not hitting the face with something just awful. So we're here to try to make that transition good and try to showcase the guys that they're going to watch once they show up here too. Like try to get the best out of all of them so that when those guys come in and plug in tape, they'll say, yeah, we need to keep that guy. We need to keep this guy.
How impressive is it that those guys have stuck with it the way that they have, though? when
I'm
they
impressed with it, but that was kind of one of the things I was assigned to do is you didn't want anything to happen that's catastrophic and have a walkout or something crazy, which could occur. And it's just testament to the guys we brought in here. There's good kids, and they're all different. They all come from nowadays. They come from all over the place. It used to just be like they're from either Texas or Oklahoma, and now they're from all over the globe. So for them to kind of bake together as they have in a short matter of time, it's good to know that we probably picked some of the right guys.
K-State sort of had an up and down year. What have you made it? What stands out about it?
It's funny, man. You watch them and they got some big physical guys. They got two great inside linebackers. The quarterback scares you to death. They got a running back that's solid. Good tight end play. It looks very similar to what they've always had, but they're just not getting the results. And not to get off topic, but Iowa State's kind of in the same boat. Their numbers are good. They got good players, and it's just a play or two here or there, man. Every game boils down to about 4 or 5 plays, and they've been close. And I know they had some stuff occur early on in the season. And I think they were ranked real high, and it didn't kind of come to fruition. And they kind of struggled there for a while. And I think they're, maybe getting their second win here at the end. But yeah, they got good players, and they do it. Those guys, they do a good job. They do it old school, and they got big, tough guys, and they play super hard. And I looked at their defensive roster particularly. They don't have a ton of transfers. They got a couple, but a lot of their guys were there as freshmen, so they do a good job.
Doug, back to watching football, you see a lot more 12, 13 personnel. Some of them are air raid teams that are kind of
like even Cliff at Washington is a bunch of 12 stuff, but they still have a lot of the same schematics in that. It's just different personnel groupings. I mean, if it was a perfect world and I could start over right now, I'd either be in 10 personnel or 12. I'd get away from 11. Because when we watch formation tape, there's 498 billion snaps of 11 personnel, 3 wide with a wing, moving around. And then there's 10 snaps of 10 personnel, and there's like 22 snaps of 12 personnel. So if you want their call sheet to be massive, just live in 11 all day long. Because that's what they're preparing for, because that's what everybody does. To me, it makes more sense to be in 10 and 12 and go back and forth with that.
How hard is it for your offense right now because of the diminishing, whether it was injury or opt-outs, whatever, you're thin there.
Yeah, we're thin everywhere. But, the good news is we got 21 days, and here we go. And that open day here at the end has probably helped us in that area. We'll probably get a couple of guys back, or not necessarily back, but healthy, Like we played those last 2 games, some guys that they played and they weren't 100%, So I appreciate their efforts, but yeah.
So is the versatility of your tight ends the key to being able to go in 12?
Yeah, that's what most of them are. They're kind of hybrid guys. They're not glorified O linemen, and they're not receivers. They're somewhere in the middle. And those guys in this day and age, they're not asked to really be dominant edge blockers and knock the edge down. They just got to draw ties and then mismatch safeties. It's kind of what you're after. Somebody that can mismatch a safety, that can win with size, but also kind of hold the point to some degree. That's kind of what you're looking for. There's not a lot of them out there. You're either going to get the light guy that thinks he's a wideout that won't block, or the glorified O lineman that gets to release into the flats every now and then. That's kind of common. To find that guy who can do both is kind of interesting. It's hard to find. So what you do is you take a big receiver and kind of see if he's tough enough to develop into that. So,
Have you kind of done that a little bit with?
yeah. We Jared Wiley, the kid we had at TCU, he plays for the Chiefs. He was a high school quarterback, and he went to Texas, and that's kind of what happened to him. There's been basketball players that have transitioned over late in their college career and made it in the NFL. So that's really what you want, just mismatch that can kind of hold a point. And if you get a guy that can do both, he's probably going to go to the NFL pretty quick,
Specifically this year, it seemed like Io has maybe lined up in line a couple of times, or am I?
Yeah, I think that was a little bit just I don't what he did was not blocking. It was more like we're trying to get a matchup on a nickel, more so than anything. But yeah, he probably don't want to hear this, but he's probably about 30 pounds away from being probably pretty good tight end, But I'm just saying, that's my opinion. Don't tell him I said that.
We're gonna have a chance to talk to Wendell today, and I wanted to ask you about. He had a great first game. Some news broke, and then he's carried on.
Well, you start getting chipped, and you start getting tight ends chipping out, backs chipping out on you, and things like that, and you get double teamed a lot, and you get frustrated, and then you run into a little bit of a wall there. You're taking on two guys primarily, and then there's the thought of moving him around on the least pass protected type guy, and you can take away an edge rusher in today's game with the chipping and the double teaming with the tight ends and the backs, and it could get frustrated. But in the NFL, they don't do it as much because those guys aren't paid to chip. So and those tackles are paid to do something too. Because when you leave a guy in to chip, it hurts the continuity of routes. Because now you're not stretching horizontally, and now two guys can get under one, those type of things. But so in the pros, you see more sacks because there's incentive-laced contracts based on sacks, and there's backs and tight ends that want to get out in a route, But so in college, there's a lot more of the double teaming and chipping. So if you have two DNs, it's a little bit harder to do, obviously. But if you got one DN that's a dominant rusher, you can kind of eliminate those guys a little bit or slow them down. So I think that's what's happened to him a little bit.
What stood out about Shamar Rigby? What do you like about him?
Body control. He's got really good ball skills. He needs to, obviously get stronger and faster. And he's a youngster, so he'll do that. But his demeanor's great. He's always right here. He's always even. He shows up to work every day with a lunch pail and goes to work and doesn't complain, doesn't say much. And but skill set wise, just he's kind of wiry and he can he has a lot of body control of the ball, has a big catch radius, and he catches the ball pretty well. And he's a young kid, he's 19 or whatever. So Coach Glass and those people down there in a year or so, he'll probably be a whole lot different player to me, because he's got the skill set.
Whenever you guys were struggling early with the passing game, I imagine that could be frustrating for receivers. The success you had at Kansas, can that boost some confidence for some of those guys?
Yeah, it can remotivate you. And, when a coach actually tells you, hey, we're going to throw it this week, you actually believe them. So it makes you practice harder as a receiver for sure,
Banks and Noah, are they healthy going into this week?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Banks took a shot now. Tail end of that Kansas game. Corner fire. Yeah, he's a tough kid, man. Yeah. Good. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you, Doug.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys. Hey, what are you doing back there, man?